So we begin our discussion about the systems of the body today. A quick review about body systems is that, remember that we started with, sorry about that. We started with atoms, molecules, compounds, cells, tissues, and now we're going to talk about organs and systems. And the first system is the system of which the skin is a part, or the integumentary system. Okay? The system which skin is a part, or the integumentary system. Now, the integumentary system's main organ is the skin, and then a little bit later on we'll talk about some accessory organs. Okay, what are called accessory organs. When we talk about organ systems, we're going to talk about both the anatomy, spelled that wrong, the anatomy of the organ system, and then the physiology of the organ system. Sometimes they go pretty closely together. Anatomy being the parts, physiology being how they work. So our discussion that we're going to do for the next couple days on skin, we'll start today with anatomy, and you should have a diagram that was handed out to you for the notes on this. And then the second part of it will be physiology, where we talk about how it works. Hey, maybe you know this about skin, maybe not. Skin is the largest organ. It says in the body, but obviously it's not really in the body. It's the largest organ. It's about 7 pounds of your body mass is skin. I don't know how many of you have been to one of those things. They had that show at the Van Andel Museum in Grand Rapids. Body, I don't remember what it was called, the one with all the human bodies and poses. They had one in Chicago where they had, in fact, they have a poster of it over there under the flag, where the guy was holding his own skin. And it's pretty incredible to see how much there is there when you peel off all the skin. But skin is the largest organ, and by surface area and mass. So let's take a look at some of the parts of skin and what they do. Okay? And we'll do that with a diagram. We usually use diagrams in this class for things like this. This is a simplified diagram. Your book has a much more complicated diagram of the same kind of thing. Okay, I've kind of used this. I like the simplified version because it kind of makes it a little bit easier to see. All right. We're going to kind of start outside and work in. The outermost layer of skin, labeled letter E on here, is called the epidermis. The epidermis is the part of the skin you can see. It's made of what are called keratinized dead skin cells. Keratinized dead skin cells. Keratin, remember, is a protein. Keratin is a protein. Whoops. Doesn't write so well sometimes. Keratin is a protein that's made by skin specifically. It's also in your hair and nails, as we'll see. As at the bottom layer here, as epidermis is produced, as these cells move farther and farther away from their blood supply, there is no blood supply to the epidermis. So these cells, as they grow, as they do mitosis and get pushed further and further up, they get farther and farther away from any blood supply, and so they die and they dry out. And as they lose moisture, they produce keratin. Keratin is a protein that if you feel your fingernails and you feel your hair is very thick and tough, and it forms this impermeable layer. There's a layer of skin cells on the top here. Okay, and that layer can range from anywhere from 1 millimeter, 0.1 millimeters, up to 2 or 3 millimeters thick. If you're on the bottom of your feet, sometimes you have really thick skin, because one of the things your body will do is when there's a lot of pressure in one spot, it will make the skin thicker. Okay, we call that a callus. A callus is just an area of thickened skin where you've been rubbing it a lot. Females actually have a thinner epidermis than males. We'll come back to that idea a little bit later. So I think you know already what I'm going to say then. So when you think that females have thin skin, they do actually figuratively and really. Letter F. Down here, letter F is called the dermis. The dermis is the layer where, quote, all the stuff is. What do I mean by stuff? Well, we'll talk about all the things in the dermal layer. Okay? Talk about all those a little bit later. But in the dermis is the layer where all the material is. The dermis is made of connective tissue. Okay, oh, by the way, this is stratified squamous. Okay, a layer of squamous cells. Then under here is connective tissue. This stuff in here is connective tissue, and you see we got hair embedded in it, we got glands embedded in it. So, but this is the layer where all the, I just put stuff, but it's actually where glands and everything else are. The hair and things like that poke through the epidermis to the outside, but it's where all this is located. And then the lowest layer of the skin down here is called the hypodermis. Hypodermis. Hypo means below. Maybe you've heard of a hypodermic needle. A hypodermic needle is one that is long enough to penetrate through the skin to the bottom layer there. Okay? The hypodermis is where fat is stored. You also find blood vessels that actually poke up into the dermis, but most of the blood vessel layers are right below the epidermis. So if you think about this then, where if you have fat somewhere in your body, like I do in my nice six-pack gut, you have epidermis, then dermis, and then my fat is packed there, and then underneath of that is a layer of muscle. Okay, really, I have muscle underneath there. And so we go from epidermis, dermis, hypodermis, then muscle. We'll see this when we dissect the cat. We'll have to skin the cat. When you skin the cat, you have to skin the cat to get to the muscle. But in some cases, you'll have this layer of fat, the hypodermis, layer of fat over top of the muscle. If you think about bodybuilders, what they try to do is to get rid of all the fat. I'm not talking about people who are lifting weights for strength. I'm talking about people who are lifting weights for bodybuilding competitions. They want to get rid of this layer of fat so that it's skin, then muscle. So they do lots of weights, or lightweight, lots of reps. They run a lot, they do a lot of exercising to try to get rid of that fat layer. They have less body fat, and then their skin lies tightly over their muscles. Okay, that's the hypodermis. Let's talk about a couple of the things that are embedded in the dermis. Letter J on our slide here is a sweat gland. We'll talk in much more detail about sweat glands later. You'll see that they actually excrete onto the surface of your skin, and we'll talk more about what sweat glands are for at a later time. Letter C, right here, associated with each hair follicle is an oil gland. Okay, Hair by nature is very dry. Oil is secreted onto that hair to keep it moist, but also oil leaks out onto the surface of the epidermis. The epidermis is very, very dry. And again, we'll talk in a little more detail later about oil glands. This is just introductory about the anatomy, but its purpose is to moisten your skin. I'm sure lots of questions are cropping up in your head right now about sweat glands, oil glands, maybe about other things. That's okay. We will come back to these things a little bit later on, and we can talk in detail about them. Letter L. Right here is a sensory nerve. You're going to watch a video in a little bit called Sensation, or we already watched it if you're watching this video as review. And they talk about the different kinds of sensory nerves in the skin. Okay? We will talk later on when we talk about the nervous system, about the purpose of sensory nerves in the skin and the different kinds of sensory nerves. The most, quote, sensitive ones stick up into the dermis. They stick up into the dermis for light touch. So you can feel that little bitty light touch there. Pressure down here creates pressure down there, which stimulates that nerve. Letter D, hair. Okay? As far as we can tell, hair is for warmth and protection. And I guess for some of you, you spend a lot of money on it to look good. We don't. Again, we'll talk in a little more detail about hair at a later time. You're probably wondering why protection. Right now, if you want to know about protection, you can take your finger and move one of the hairs on your arm. And if you just touch one of the hairs on your arm, you'll notice that as it wiggles, it actually has a nerve attached to it. And that nerve attached to it, they don't show it on the slide, but the nerve attached to it, every hair follicle on your body has a nerve associated with it. So if an insect is crawling across your arm and it's wiggling one of those hairs, you feel it. Okay, you just take one hair in your head and wiggle it, you can feel that. Okay, not if you have really long hair, it has to actually wiggle by the root. But you can feel very, very light touch because of the hair sticking, the nerve with the hair. Letter A. It's called the Strata. Let me erase the ink a minute. Literally, base layer. It's the lowest layer of living cells in the epidermis. There's a lot of mitosis going on here. Okay, you'll notice that the stratum basale has ripples in it. That's because of the dermis poking up into it. And in your fingers and toes, these are regular ridges, okay, which is where your fingerprints are. The stratum basale is where rapid mitosis is taking place and cells are being produced to grow and take the place of the epidermis that's constantly flaking off. Letter B. Associated with every hair follicle is a muscle. Erector pilli, pilli is plural, pillis in Latin means hair. The erector pilli muscle is right here. When you get scared or excited or something like that, the erector pilli muscle contracts, pulling the hair up. This is what happens in your cat or dog when its hair, quote, stands on end. Your hair can kind of stand on end too. It doesn't really show on your head as much as it would show on your arms and your legs. And so your hair stands up. We really think that's kind of we really don't know why humans still have the ability to do that, because it doesn't really make you look bigger or anything. There is some evidence that it might help you stay warmer, but as the muscle contracts and pushes the hair up, it forms a bump. All the hair bumps up, and so it pushes up on the skin and forms what we call a goose bump. Okay, a goose bump is just because this muscle is contracted and pushed the hair up. Okay, and so it makes a bump on your skin because as the hair pushes up, it pushes up on your skin. So the erector pilli muscle also has the distinction of the smallest muscle in the body, although I say you get asked that at Jeopardy, but they don't ask questions that difficult. Letter H, just so you know, it's just showing fat tissue, okay, adipose tissue or fat. So, those are the layers and parts of skin that you need to know for the quiz tomorrow. Okay, we'll have a quiz over that slide. One thing I forgot to talk about, just briefly, letter K is actually the hair follicle. We'll talk in more detail about hair follicles next time. I also wanted to talk about the next slide, and I apologize for the disjointedness of this video presentation. The functions of skin, there are basically two. One is to give you sensory data from your environment. Sensory data from your environment. We already talked about hair follicles. We talked about nerve endings. The second is protection from ultraviolet light, which we'll talk about, chemicals, okay? One thing I did not put on here, and probably the most important function of skin, is to conserve water. Let me write that word conserve again. To conserve water. Okay. That ends the presentation. Sorry.